Thank you.
You're welcome.
Welcome everyone to the February 23rd, 2023 version of the Bond Accountability Committee for the Portland Public School District. We are going to go ahead and start with introductions of our BAC members. And I think if I could start with Greg, if you'd like to start first.
Sure. I'm Greg DiLoretto. I think I've been on the committee now for 2 years, since 2021. For the new folks, I went to Kellogg Grade School, one of the schools they did, and also graduated from Franklin High School and finished my career actually 10 years ago as the chief executive for the Tuolumne Valley Water District in Beaverton, Oregon.
Thank you, Greg. Jonathan, would you like to go next?
There are two Jonathans. Was that?
I'm so sorry.
It doesn't happen
course,
often.
You're our newest Jonathan. Yes, if you could go next, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Marina, and thanks for the opportunity here. I'm Jonathan Tread, and this is my first meeting. I am the Director of Real Estate Development at Home Forward. Really briefly about Home Forward, we are the housing authority for Multnomah County. And we have a real estate portfolio of about 7,000 affordable apartments, homes. And then we administer the Section 8 program for Multnomah County. So all told, we serve about, 15,000 households or 33,000 people with affordable housing. So my job as the Director of Real Estate Development, I oversee both the design/construction and all the public funding and private financing that enables affordable housing development and preservation. We have 453 new homes being built right now, many of them funded by the City of Portland and Metro General Obligation bonds. I've been at this about 20 years, and I'm just really excited to join this group.
Welcome. We look forward to having you join us. Ryan, you are also a new member of the BAC. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Ryan Kinsella. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm newest to the committee, along with Jonathan, the first Jonathan. Yeah, right now I am the Director of Capital Asset Management at Oregon Metro, and I've been there for about 6 months. Prior to that, I was at the City of Portland, where I was in the budget office and worked my way up to the Deputy Director, and then was the Director of Finance over at the Portland Bureau of Transportation. So I'm super excited to be here. I'm really looking forward to being involved in this committee and look forward to working with everybody.
Thank you, Ryan. Norm Dowdy, who is another one of our members, is not able to make it tonight. I think, as I mentioned before, Kara, I believe, is joining us by way of the live stream. And Darren Harold Golden does not appear to be with us yet tonight either. So with that, I'm Marina Kratzwell. I'm the Senior Director of the Office of School Modernization. And I am going to ask Dan to introduce himself.
Happy to. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone. My name is Dan Young, Chief Operating Officer at Portland Public Schools. I've been with PPS for 13 years now, almost 13 years, just shy of that. And I've been in the role of Chief Operating Officer for about 4 years. And also worth noting, maybe, Jonathan, I happened to walk by Walsh Commons today, the Northwest Housing Alternatives Project. And so I thought of you earlier this afternoon.
And then I think for everybody else, in the interest of keeping things quick, we're going to ask that you introduce when it's time for you to do your presentations. For the most part, the folks that are on this call are staff that will be presenting tonight. We are going to be talking through a couple different presentations. Our performance auditors, Shobert Evashank, will be providing an overview of our Year 5 work plan for the audit that's in progress. We will also do project updates on the 2020 bond fund set aside for curriculum, project updates for 2020 bond fund set aside for technology, and then project updates on our modernizations, which span, at this point, the three that we'll be providing are from our 2017 bond and our 2020 bond. So we will roll right on into that. I will ask David Main, who is our communications manager, if we have received any requests for public comment.
Nope, there is not any tonight.
Okay, so with that, we will move forward past the public comment period. We're going to go to the Audit Year 5 work plan presentation, and we are going to turn it over to SEC, Shoberg Evashank, and Grace. Just a quick note before you all do your introductions. You can go ahead and do the screen sharing. That will bump me out of place until you are done with your presentation.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Brady. I'm happy to be here tonight with Grace Park to share with you our audit scope for the Year 5 performance audit of the 2017 and the 2020 bond programs. Grace, you want to go ahead and next slide? Thank you. So before Grace talks to you about the audit scope itself, I thought for the benefit of the newer committee members, we'd give a quick background and refresher on our role on these bond audits. Our firm was hired by PPS in October of 2018 to conduct annual performance audits for the 2017 bond and its projects. And then with the passage of the 2020 bond, we also are looking at those projects as well. This is our 5th year doing the annual audits. We've issued 4 reports thus far, and the 4th year audit report recently just got finalized with PPS responses. A quick introduction on our firm. Shoberg Evashank Consulting, which is a mouthful, was founded 23 years ago by the former California state auditor. And we specialize solely in public sector audits and consulting, primarily in the Western US. Over the years, we've conducted many audits of school districts, departments of education, community colleges, universities, and we have extensive experience with capital project delivery, management construction financing, and bond-funded projects. PPS requires us, and our firm follows what is known as generally accepted government auditing standards. We call it GAGAS, or Yellow Book standards. And those standards provide a framework to help auditors ensure that what we do has objectivity and integrity and quality to our audits. So those standards set forth a variety of requirements that we must follow related to independence, ethics, planning, and gathering sufficient evidence to support our results, among a lot of other provisions. We feel that the evidence standard is one of the more important features of GAGAS because our conclusions have to be based on evidence, testing of data, analysis, not just our opinion. This also impacts PPS the most because we ask for a lot of documentation from them at the beginning, the middle, and at the end of our audit. Another important standard that impacts PPS relates to the requirement that we obtain and incorporate the views of responsible officials in our report. It's really important that PPS's perspective is included. We always want to agree on the facts, but we also want to get your written response to the formal report, as well as we discuss preliminary observations in informal briefings that we hold along the way during the audit as issues and recommendations are developing. We also use these standards each year when we develop an annual scope for the audit cycle. And that's what we're here today to talk to you about, the work plan. We do develop that scope a variety of different ways. We might interview the PPS executive leadership, OSM management. Now with the 2020 bond, we're getting into some of the other PPS areas as well. We talk to stakeholders, really trying to get perspective and understand the current environment, risks, concerns, challenges, and where the audit might have most value. We have access to OSM eBuilder project files. We look at meeting notes, project status reports, board meeting minutes, and whatnot, prior audit status. And then we consider those factors as part of project conditions and complexity, fiscal constraints, maybe it's unresolved prior audit issues, to help us identify what would be good areas to audit during that year. We also try to factor in project phasing. So for instance, it wouldn't make any sense to audit construction management if a project was just in the design phases. So based on those planning efforts, we develop our initial work plan that we work with OSM to refine and those audit focus areas before actually finalizing it and starting the work. So to talk about the specifics of the 2022-2023 audit scope, I will turn it over to Grace.
Thank you, Kathy. Hi, everyone. My name is Grace Park. Good evening, members of the BAC. We know that relevant, real-time, and implementable recommendations are important to OSM and to us. And so we try to tailor our audit work to current bond events so that potential issues can immediately be addressed. So what I will be sharing with you today are what we call the big audit questions that will help us focus that work. And because with the program this large, it's easy to get buried in the weeds. And so working toward addressing those key questions will help us focus as we are going through our analyses. All right. So for the first area, we will be looking at the status of the 2017 and 2020 bonds. This is a recurring focus area for each year because it's important to provide the public with an independent assessment of where the bond program stands in terms of delivering what has been pledged. The second scope item relates to career learning equity. As you may know, there are 3 components of PPS's equity and public purchasing and contracting policy: business equity, contractor workforce, and career learning. We have covered business and contractor workforce equity in the past 2 audit cycles. And so career learning equity will close the loop for us on assessing equity at PPS as it relates to the bond programs. The third area relates to curriculum and technology, areas of improvements funded by the 2020 bond. During last year's audit, we conducted a higher level review of those areas as part of our 2020 bond framework assessment. And so for this year, we're doing a little bit of a deeper dive into everything that OTL and Otis are doing to make sure that improvements are being delivered as intended. Finally, the last item is prior audit recommendations. While it is important for us to validate any progress made by OSM and PPS toward addressing past recommendations, I want to say that over the past few audits, we found that OSM takes our recommendations very seriously and is looking at implementing every one of them. And so we anticipate that this area will be a smaller focus this year, and maybe at some point in the future, there won't be any recommendations at all for us to follow up on. Okay, so in terms of timeline, the dates you see here are the milestones for our audit work. From now until the end of June, we will be conducting audit fieldwork, which will include interviews and analyses. And we plan to have a non-public draft report ready for OSM and other departments involved in the audit by mid-August. A final ready for the public report should be available by the end of October, with presentations to follow hopefully shortly after before year end. And that is all we have. Thank you for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions if there are any. Okay, it looks like there are no questions. I can't see everyone's screen, so I will stop sharing my screen then. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So give me just a minute here while I get us back to our BAC presentation. It looks like I have my slides a little bit out of order, so I'm gonna do this one, and then we'll see that another one come up that says we're doing our performance audit year 5 work plan presentation, but just switch those two. This one that you see in front of you is really intended to be a reminder regarding some of the data constraints that we have on our business equity data. We do report on business equity on our program as a whole, as well as on our projects. And that data comes from a software system called B2G that is based on payments made to our vendors. So what that means is based on the payments that have been made to date, we can identify how much of those payments have been made to certified businesses. That is the data that we report. Now, there are some constraints on the data. It tends to lag a couple months because it is verified by contractors after the payments have been made. In addition to that, we do sometimes find that contractors have not entered their information in a timely way, or they've maybe not entered it correctly. We do validate data as often as possible. And if we see changes to the data, that will update the numbers that we present to you as well. So we do come back with updated numbers, even if it's a year later. Okay, moving on to program administration. That is my portion of the presentation. And so I am going to probably try to go through this relatively quickly. Just kind of a quick note on our business equity and workforce equity. We do provide both the cumulative and a rolling 12-month. The 12-month is really just a way to say, here's a snapshot in time. This is what it looks like currently. It might give us some idea of where the trends are going over the cumulative. The cumulative is actually from the start of the program in 2012. So that looks back at the entire history of the program. And across the entire history of the program, our cumulative business equity number is now up to 16.43%. That is an increase from the last time. We are getting closer to that 18% goal. And that has been consistent in terms of we are continually increasing. The 12-month looks good. Again, based on payments made during that 12-month period, it could change, but we're excited to see that we're seeing some increases in that data. We're seeing that within the projects as well. And so we generally know where that information is coming from. On the workforce side, we have been consistently above the goal for minority workforce. So we're currently at 29%. Our goal is 25%. And we have been consistently above our requirement for apprenticeship, which is 20%. We are at 23%. So good news, I think, on both fronts. From a budget perspective, we'll start with the 2012 program. I think as many of our existing BAC members know, there is no new news on 2012. We have essentially been complete with the work on the 2012 bond program for quite a while. Grant Bowl, we have been, what we call Grant Bowl is actually the installation of softball field at Grant High School. That was one of our final larger projects for 2012. That work is essentially complete. We got caught up in some supply chain issues with the scoreboards. We're anticipating that those will be installed by the end of March. Beyond that, there's very little to note there, other than we continue to show you this information as we go through and reconcile all of the financials associated with the 2012 program, which is substantial. So this will continue to show up for quite a while. If we have funds left, when we get through all of that reconciliation, we will go back and look at things that might have been value engineered out of projects that were in the 2012 bond, or that might fit within the projects that were identified as being part of that bond measure. Any questions about 2012 before I move on to 2017? Okay. So we will move on to 2017. 2017, we are at 81% spent. Our last report out in November, we were at 79%. So we are continuing to move forward with spending those funds. I think as many folks know, we have completed most of the work on our health and safety projects, but we do have some categories that continue. Primarily active projects that we're seeing right now are asbestos abatement projects, our lead paint mitigation. We do have, we're generally finishing up on our water quality as well. Just some minor remaining work on that. Beyond that, of the remaining funds, we do have some funds that we expect to be coming back from the water quality and the lead paint in particular. And we know that there's going to be a substantial amount. We're still identifying what that amount is. Once we know that, we anticipate that those funds will go back towards health and safety projects in particular. We expect to have a conversation about that when we have those numbers, but at the moment, we don't quite have those yet. So you can see that, expect to see that coming to you later. On our modernizations from the 2017, a couple things to note. We've been talking over the last couple meetings about MPG moving all of its costs to the 2020 funds because it was budgeted fully in the 2020 bond measure. We forwarded funds from 2017 to start the work, but it was fully funded then in 2020. So we have been going through a process of moving all of those expenditures to 2020 funds. That process is complete now. So you will see that MPG does not show up on the 2017 program list. It is fully on the 2020 program list. Greg, that will make you happy because that is one last thing that you have to look at between 2017 and 2020 both. Okay. The other thing, in terms of our other modernizations, Lincoln is still showing forecasting coming under. You're going to get a presentation from our senior project manager, Eric Girding, on Lincoln later this evening to get more information about Lincoln at that point. Kellogg, we have essentially completed all of the work there. We do have some minor things going on, not enough for us to continue reporting out on it and using your time for that. If we have any additional funds that are going to come back to the program, we'll note that, but at the moment we're forecasting using all of the remaining funds that are shown there. We have already pulled some funds back to the program from that project. McDaniel does have some work continuing with netting at one of the fields. That said, we are still forecasting roughly $2 million to come back to the program. We'd like to see how that project proceeds with the netting before we, really identify exactly how much is going to come back. But at the moment, we anticipate that $2 million is we're fairly confident with that number. Let me see, what else do we have here? Just a quick reminder that on Benson, we show the high school modernization as one line. We show the swing sites for Benson as another line. Those are all one budget. Any funds that come back from the swing site work will go to the Benson High School modernization. So you will see they cancel each other out on the over-under. That is on purpose. They are all part of one single budget. We're still working through the closeout of the swing site projects. They are complete. We're just closing out all of the contracts, and then we'll be shifting those funds back to the Benson High School modernization. I expect you'll see that at the next meeting. And I believe that is all of the information I was expecting to tell you tonight about 2017, unless you have questions before I move on to 2020. Okay, seeing none, we'll move forward to 2020. 2020, we have spent 16% of that bond measure set of funds. That is up from 11%. May not seem like very much, but it's a large amount of money, and those percentages really add up. We've been doing quite a bit of work, and there are a number of things that are starting to really heat up as we head into the summer. Summer is when we do a large amount of work on our non-modernization projects, primarily because that's the time we can get into schools and not have students occupying the school, staff and students. So we have bidding in full swing for many of our summer projects. I believe we've completed one invitation to bid for roofing. We have another 7 to go. We are expecting to put out an alternative procurement RFP for Harrison Park for the capacity project there. That should be coming out fairly soon. That is also work that will be starting this summer. I should say the second phase will start this summer. We have classroom door locks that have been being installed through our security funds. Those are in progress. They're moving along nicely. And we anticipating having all of those installed by the end of the school year, with the exception of some doors that are where we need to replace the full door in order to do the hardware. Those will follow shortly. Our ADA upgrades will be bidding in the next couple months. Our security cameras will also be bidding in the next couple months. So that is also work that is going to start moving forward in the summer. Some of that work will occur over the school year as well, but we do like to get as much done during the summer as we can. As we move into the late spring, early summer, we are starting to look at work on developing our RFPs for master planning for modernizations for Cleveland High School and for I.W. Wells High School. So that is work that we expect to report out on later this year. From a budget perspective, there's not much to see here. I do want to make just kind of a quick note that technology is showing an amount that is under. They do anticipate utilizing all of their funding. They are still working through their forecasting for that. So don't look at that and think the 10 million is coming back. It's not. It will get spent on technology, and we are expecting to update those forecasts fairly soon. They will be providing a presentation to you tonight as well, so you'll get more information on that as well. And last but not least, I did want to note, in particular, there was some conversation about Jefferson and the budget. Per the conversations that we had at our last BAC and at the board meeting in December, when we discussed the approval of the comprehensive plan for Jefferson, that comprehensive plan came with an updated cost estimate for the budget. That updated cost estimate required additional funds, and those funds have come from the 2020 bond program contingency. So you will see that change noted in the contingency line as a difference between the original budget and the current budget. That is the primary difference that you see there. And you'll see the change noted in the Jefferson line between the original budget and the current budget to see where those funds have gone. Any questions on the 2020 bond budget? Greg, if you're talking, you are on mute.
Now I'm talking to myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I did raise the question because the number was just a sticker shock that went from 311 to 65 million dollars or 66 million. I mean, it's like half of what we spent to do the entire Franklin project 10 years ago. So it just seemed, it was frankly just a number I was not prepared to see, such a big number. And I know we were pretty tough on the number you used for escalation costs before the bond measure, the previous BAC. So we may have been obviously underestimated what's happened in the world. But that's all. It was just such a huge increase that it caused me consternation. But I mean, if the board's good with it, then great. We go forward. That's really their decision. And we took the money out of our contingency, and you have indicated that what is left is enough to cover the other projects. So that's what it's for. I'm happy.
Jefferson is our only fully funded modernization in the 2020 bond. The other two modernizations are funded through design, but not through construction. And construction, of course, is when you have the most likely need for contingency funds. So, I think we understood when we moved forward with the 2020 bond measure that we needed to have a healthy program contingency, in part because the escalation was really an unknown at that point. And that was what we were getting from outside cost estimators as well. So unfortunately, our least wanted forecast came to fruition, which is that it was escalation was considerably more than what we thought. And fortunately, we did have the funds available in the contingency to address that. Okay, and just a couple of quick notes. These are not specific to budget, but as you can see, we have an awful lot of work going on. When we have a lot of work, we need more staff. And so we have been working hard to hire more staff in on our project management side in particular. We do have 2 potential offers in progress for our PM2 level positions. That's our mid-level project manager. We have one potential offer in progress for PM1. That's our entry-level project manager. We do actually have some more in the pipeline as we're going through interviews. It sounds like a lot. I can tell you they're much needed positions, particularly for the volume of work that we're doing, especially as we're looking at things like our roofing projects, our mechanical, our seismic, those projects that we do so much of the summertime in particular. So we are happy to see that we've got some good candidates coming in, and we're looking forward to bringing them on and introducing them at some point. As we go through and start bringing folks on, I will be updating our org chart. We'll share that out again to the BAC and maybe spend a little bit of time just talking about the department and how the department is set up as well, just as a reminder for how, generally how we operate. With that, if there are no program questions, I will go ahead and get us started on our project updates. We will be starting with curriculum. Before we get started, any additional questions on the program?
Oops. I have one quick one, which relates to how we get everything paid for in an incredibly volatile and escalatory construction cost environment, which has to do with the Portland Clean Energy Fund. And I'm just wondering, are there any conversations between the district and PSEF that contemplate using some of that evergreen fund of $100 million a year that the city is working very hard to get out the door into any of these upgrades?
There have not been any conversations between OSM and the city. I am not sure if there are others within the district that are having those conversations, and that's where I'm going to look to Dan.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a good question. And we have been having conversations with PSEF and looking at some of the grants. I don't have the details at my fingertips, but I can certainly get that and share that with you, Jonathan.
Sure. I think they're probably open to ideas to get those dollars out. And when you just think about the equity outcomes that they're trying to achieve, there may be some alignment. And I think they're looking, if I had to speculate, for what should I say, partners who can deploy money in ways that it's a regular, should I say, like there's a process by which year in and year out, PSEF could count on money getting put to use in a way that's publicly accountable and meets their goals and is at scale. So yeah, if you have time, Dan, I'd love to chat more about it.
Yeah, that's great. And I know we've had some conversations, and if recollection, I think some of it was around solar, but let me get with the subject matter experts and get some information.
Okay, any other questions? With that, I am hoping I can turn this over to Mary. And Mary, are you able to present your slides?
I am. Let me get my slideshow out. Share. I want to share my screen. Sorry about that. Should have this down by now, year 3 of the pandemic, but I do not. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay,
You can. Thank you.
okay, great. So I'm here to talk about our curriculum adoption. So I am Mary Weiner. I work for the Office of Teaching and Learning, and I manage all of our wonderful curriculum purchases and everything leading up to the purchases. So I just wanted to put the bond language in here that just states the, what was in the original bond, which is to provide comprehensive, culturally relevant, and current curriculum materials across core and supplemental subject areas. And so I know there's a couple new people on. I've said it multiple times over my years of presenting here, but a couple years of presenting here, but a lot of the curriculum we've had were very ancient curriculum. In the terms of curriculum, 15 years is ancient for our curriculum. So we are definitely in need, and we've been working very hard over the past few years to adopt new curriculum. Just a little history. So in beginning in school year 2021, so right after the bond was purchased or bond was passed, we began work on some of our adoptions in our core content areas, K-5 math, K-3 foundational skills, dual language, and then last year we had a lot of adoptions last year. This is not normal for districts to go through this many adoptions in this span of time. But there was that need not only from the state to meet the requirements of Division 22, which sets the baseline for education for all students within Oregon, but also simply our curriculum was just so out of date that it wasn't effective for our students. So last year we went through some great adoptions, and this fall students received their materials and teachers received their materials, and we were able to roll out all of these adoptions. And there's actually one in here that is going to the board at the next board meeting, because for K-5 health, the way it's spaced out throughout the year is that it's actually coming up now. So that one's part of last year's adoption, but is going to the board now. And I don't know, I always like visual things, so I stuck some pictures on there as well. And again, because of the bond work, I realize there's puppets in some of them. So because of the bond work, we have to supplement with general funds, because a lot of the things are not bond compensable. So we've spent the past couple of years with the bond, forming a bond compensability committee, where we're really able to determine what we can purchase through the bond and what we have to leverage general funds for. So we've been we're a pretty well-oiled machine now, I would say, in regards to compensability and being able to know what we can purchase through the bond and what's without. And this year, we also have a lot of adoptions. I know it looks as much as last year, but it actually is not. So we're going through K-12 social sciences. It's a lot of work. We've been meeting on a very regular basis, and social sciences, at least grades 6 through 12, have not had new curriculum in 15 years. And President Obama is not part of the textbooks that students are currently using. So there is a great need, obviously, for new curriculum. And we're at different stages within each adoption, but we are plugging along and moving forward. A lot of our ESL, ELL language, or ESL, ELL work is also being adopted right now. Visual and performing arts, again, K-8 physical education. So all of these, and I just wanted to put the board dates on there because I think it's important to know that these items come up, towards the end of the year generally, because we spend the year planning. And then if we're able to take it to the board, these are our anticipated board dates. And then moving forward, so that was, this past year or this year, and then moving forward, these are our current adoptions for next year. So K-5 science, social emotional learning, and then we'll continue on through the next few years. So we're beginning to plan out what that adoption schedule looks like over the next few years. And hopefully we'll be able to leverage bond funds in the future to help support those, putting in a little plug for that. But we are currently working with internal staff as well as OD to determine a schedule moving forward for our adoptions. Adoptions traditionally are every 6 years. So every 6 years, we begin that cycle of looking at materials, engaging committee members, and really determining what that is. So just to talk about schedule factor going in the future. So we want to be able to space out some of our larger adoptions so they're more digestible for teachers. So for instance, if we have math and language arts back to back, those are two huge adoptions. So spacing it out, moving towards ODE's schedule, and then doing our best to maintain the 6-year adoption schedule. So we're really being cognizant moving forward of what that might look like. Schedule at a glance. So we have been doing a pretty good job spending out our funds, which is great because we're able to keep it on. We're great looking for scope, budget, and schedule. And so we, like you can see on this, we have been leveraging additional funds. So about $17 million within that other funding column is about what we're looking at to support additional adoption work, consumable supplies, professional development moving forward. But we're really on track with where we're hoping to be this time. In the beginning, we did have some shifts in schedule, but that was just prioritizing which adoptions happened and when, which wasn't really fleshed out very well at the beginning of the process. But we're doing a pretty good job right now. I'm very pleased with where we're at, and you know, we could always buy more, but we're going to work within the budget we have and be able to complete all of those adoptions. And like Marina said, for construction, curriculum also has faced inflation, even from when we first purchased 2 years ago, when for K-5 math, those prices have increased 20, 30, 40% in some cases. So because some of the items originally were not bond compensable, we were able to reallocate those funds to help support the adoption components that were more expensive than how we had originally budgeted. So just status update. So we distributed all of the new materials for all the curriculum throughout the schools. We also are, and this again is not bond compensable, but focusing on professional development for our new teacher, or for all of our teachers, through summer sessions as well as monthly cadre meetings. And then we've also been able to launch all of our new adoptions, which is formation of committees and decisions on what we're going to field test, so what teachers are going to actually use in the classroom to determine what we want to purchase. And it's very robust, and you know, I know I know they're mostly construction folks on here, but I'm very pleased with how teachers have been engaging in this process, especially within this year. We have some really dedicated teachers, especially with social sciences, really wanting to be part of the adoption work, really wanting to help dive in and determine what we're doing. I actually, before this, had this meeting not been canceled, I would have been like right up against 6 p.m. leading an adoption committee work. But we really have been having ongoing, continued, and wonderful support for this. Just some concerns. So we have obviously, you know, cuts to general funds, which, you know, we don't have our budget yet. Inflation. We also have some positions that teacher positions that we're working within the district that have been unassigned that we're helping with adoptions. So we're coming up with a plan as to how to support those adoptions without those roles being there. And then again, supply chain issues. That was wonderful, interesting this fall, late summer, when we were trying to get materials in and hustling with vendors to try to get as much in. And it is hopefully it's better this year, but we're planning on it being the worst, and we will continue with those supply chain issues. But teachers have their materials, so we're happy and we're great. And luckily with curriculum, there's a great bit of digital components. So for those that we're waiting on materials for, our teachers were still able to have those digital components and be able to implement their new curriculum without the physical components. And that's all I got. Any questions? Great. No questions. Good.
Okay. So a lot of shaking no heads. So we will go ahead and go back to our presentation.
Oh, do I stop sharing? Is that what I am?
You're fine. I will go ahead and share in there. Does everybody see the presentation again? Okay, great. Technology is going to be providing our next update on projects. And we have one slide for technology, which is the standard that we usually show to let folks talk through what they're doing. And Don, I don't know if that's going to be you or Jody, but I'll let you do introductions.
Well, thank you, Marina, and welcome to the new committee members. I want to say we entered into this one thinking this is kind of a standard update report. It had missed my awareness that we had new members to the committee, that it may be helpful to get a more robust, like, what is the technology program? And so if that is something that is important and you would like to see, we're happy to come back and provide a little bit more of an in-depth overview of what the entire technology upgrade portion of the bond is for 2020. That said, this is also a little bit of a transition meeting for us, as I'm going to be turning over the lead of this to our Senior Director of Technology Operations and our project manager for change management and communications, Derek Brown, who's our Senior Director, and Jody Shaw. So with that, I will step out of their way and let them take over.
I'll just do a quick introduction. Good evening, Derek Brown, as Don mentioned, Senior Director of Technology Operations. Rejoined the district about a year ago, bounced around to a couple of districts. I was with Evergreen Public Schools as the CIO for a little over 5 years, with North Clackamas for almost 2 years as the CIO. And when this position opened up and I got an opportunity to partner with Don, I jumped on it. And so elated to be back and working with all of you. This is exciting work. And we're replacing equipment that I was part of putting in 13, 14 years ago, as well as some of the new. So exciting time to be with Portland Public Schools. Thank you. Jody, turning it over to you.
Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to get to see you all. This is my first BAC meeting, so I'm really excited to get to hear about all the new members, and certainly if anybody has any additional questions, keep me posted. I'm going to just do a quick overview with some of our milestones, a couple talking points here to showcase on the screen where we're at and some of our progress. So as you all that were previously here for previous meetings, there has been a switch in how we have done some of our technology. For the classroom technology, we've broken it down into obviously our teaching stations, but within the classroom, we previously had whiteboards that were part of our scope where we were going to be installing brand new whiteboards. Originally, it was going to be to actually install those whiteboards on top of the existing teaching wall. That way we didn't have any abatement time frame and things like that. But we changed gears, we pivoted, we added that into our scope based on cost, time. We really saw a big delay in our schedule. So we have now pivoted for our classroom technology to have projector screens in all of those classrooms. So we've had a little bit of a longer time frame with our school group 1 than we originally anticipated, which is why you see the impacts here in the schedule in the red. We have now switched gears towards that projector screen, so we are getting back on track with our schedules, which is great, and certainly moving forward with all of the additional technology. So for those folks that are new to the committee, in the classroom, there will be a new wall-mounted projector. There'll be a new projector screen. There will be a brand new Lightspeed audio sound system for surround sound. So anywhere you are in the classroom, you'll have great sound quality, in addition to a teaching microphone, a student engagement microphone, and then we'll also have a brand new teaching station, updated computers, monitors, and also as we start to think about assisted listening systems, we are also adding in transmitters so that students are able to use headset devices to be able to have assisted listening systems throughout the classroom, and they can go classroom to classroom with a wireless experience. In addition, we are putting in Wi-Fi into the classroom. So previously, wireless was shared. It was in the hallway, for instance, a shared wireless access point between different points on the school campus. So we're making sure that no matter where you are in the school campus, there is going to be a strong Wi-Fi connection. So those are all different pieces of our Bond 2020 technology side of things for the classroom technology. So that is the part that's really switched gears when it comes to our scope and really our scheduled delay here. Some of the other projects that we are tackling, which is really exciting, are in our infrastructure and security standpoint. We are implementing a lot of really latest and greatest platforms and technologies, being proactive on the cybersecurity standpoint, as well as from the staffing to make sure that we are monitoring and also being proactive for cybersecurity. As we know, as far as the device project went, that was completed, and each and every single student has a computer, every teacher has a computer. So now we really need to make sure that we're ramping up that cybersecurity side of things to make sure everyone in the district and all of those PPS devices are fully protected. So that is a little bit more about our security projects that we've got. The reason that we've got that unallocated funds, we are still evaluating several different pieces when it comes to platforms, specifically additional staffing, and also from an installation standpoint. For one example of that, we are installing those wireless access points. We have a very specific timeline on when we need to get those installed by, because we have purchased them through E-rate funding sources. So we're going to need to make sure that we get those installed as quickly as possible. So we have actually pulled that section of work out and we're adjusting that. So we're getting on schedule. That's getting completed outside of some of our already existing project schedules. So lots going on. The impact of this is going to be absolutely fantastic as we're starting to think about how we can tackle all of the schools throughout the district. We have drawn a line in the sand for any of those schools that were fully modernized or have a plan to be fully modernized. We're really focused for Bond 2020 here with the technology side of things, trying to make sure we're focused on the other schools so that we can make sure all of the technology is the latest and greatest for our students and our teachers. So that's a little bit about Bond 2020 technology. Anybody have any questions? I'm gonna put it on the gallery mode so I can take a look.
Hey Jody, this is Ryan.
Hey Ryan.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thanks for the great update. There's two numbers that kind of jumped out to me that I was hoping you could tell a little bit more about the story on. One is I saw like the tech admin budget is forecasted to be $23 million like under budget. What's the story with that? And then the other one, I'll just put it out there while you're looking at it, is the ERP change. It looks like you guys had like a big change in budget there, and then are going in like that direction. So just wanted to hear sort of like what the background on that was.
Great question. So our 5519, that technology program admin, is this is the bucket of money if we need additional funds in a different location. Also, as far as the administration side of things, as you know, inflation, we don't necessarily have, we've been able to mitigate a lot of our risks already with some of our other purchases, which is great. From a 5519, the administration side of things, that's really, we want to make sure that we have the staffing and the project management, and we've got some of those different things in place. So we are going to be implementing some of that, but those aren't allocated funds quite yet. And that's really where, as we were talking about those new cybersecurity platforms, for instance, if we need additional project managers specific to that cybersecurity, we want to make sure that we've got some administration funds that are available to make sure that has the visibility that it needs. And when we're starting to think about 5519, it's also the administration for all of the different account codes, all of the different projects. So that particular project manager could also help with some of the other pieces as well. So that one's really waiting to be allocated in the near future. The ERP 5518, this is an interesting one because originally our ERP, so the backbone of our financial, HR, the business side of Portland Public School District, this was originally scoped when the bond was created as being able to implement a brand new ERP system. Unfortunately, we needed a lot more planning in order to get to that point. And so what we've actually done is the funds that are allocated towards the ERP are actually allocated up to a certain line before the implementation phase, because we just didn't have enough funds for that implementation phase. But we're working all the way up until that line for all of the planning and all of the work, because if we're really starting to think about HR, the business side of things, the accounting, everything, that ERP system is actually, I believe, about 20 years old. And so our goal is really to make sure that we're picking and doing all of the right alignment before we get to that new ERP system, to make sure it's a smooth transition, because that would be much harder if the finances and HR and all of the business side didn't have a smooth transition. So we're doing all of that work right up until that implementation line. And then whichever bond is going to be next, that has been allocated for that ERP implementation of the software, whatever that future software is, as well as the administration of building that out. Yeah, good questions though. Can I help anyone else? Any other questions? These are great though. So as you're starting to kind of look here in what we've already completed, we've completed our 5515. So that was our device replacement. So that was getting our one-to-one, a Chromebook out to our individual students, 2-to-1. So our K through kindergarten, first grade, and second grade got those in the classrooms. And then we really focused on the teachers as well. So that was all part of that device replacement that was already completed. We aren't forecasting for any additional funds. However, we want to make sure that we've got the numbers there just in case something happens, if we need to. And then also from a status standpoint, I wanted to give you all a quick update where we're at from a classroom technology total completion side of things. We are 77% done with the classroom technology at Boise specifically, which was in school group 1, 59% done with classroom technology at Lane, 48% so far done with Caesar, and then 34% done at George. We're also starting in school group 2 for Jefferson. We just started doing some wireless access point cabling, and so that is kicking off for school group 2. And then for our teaching station refresh, we're actually all the way through school group 6, which is really fantastic. So we are making some serious progress with all of the things that we've been working on. Yeah, go for it. I love the hand raised. It's perfect.
You said something about Jefferson. So
yep. Yeah.
Build
so
the school, so we're going to spend money on the old school. So
exactly. So for Jefferson, Cleveland, and Ida B. Wells, we know that there's going to be future building, future funds allocated towards that. However, those schools have all now new devices. So the students have one-to-one devices, the teachers have new devices. So wireless access is really important to make sure that we have access and we can use those computers within the school. So Jefferson, Ida B. Wells, and Cleveland are all specifically earmarked for just that slimmer scope to make sure that we are not installing a lot of technology that's in the walls and then we're going to tear down the school and start somewhere else, right? We want to make sure we're good stewards of the funds. So we are making sure that those particular schools have great Wi-Fi. The additional classroom technology will be really focused in those other new buildings. So they won't necessarily be getting the brand new projectors and the light speeds quite yet. But that is definitely one of those elements that we wanted to make sure that we were not reduplicating all of the work in the original school as well as the brand new school. With the exception of those 3 schools, all of the rest of the schools will be getting all of the classroom technology.
Thank you.
Yeah. And any other questions? And I can also put into the chat our Bond 2020 technology webpage that also gives a lot of the additional information out to the community. And it is really intended to be a point of updates for our community and also a schedule. So let's see. Oh, it looks like I might not have the capability to share, but I'll share it with Marina and it may go out to the rest. But if anybody's interested, pps.net/bond 2020 bond-tech. That is our website. And we've got the project schedule up there and all sorts of updates.
Thank you, Jody. We can't do chat due to the public meeting requirements. So thank you for saying that out loud. And we're happy to send that to our BAC members by email afterwards if they would like to get that in writing as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
And we will go ahead and move on to our modernization projects. I did provide in here some status definitions for the status at a glance. Those are also in your packets. These work really well for construction projects. Don't work quite so well for curriculum and technology. So we're kind of winging it a little bit on the status updates, but similar to these, I can tell you that when it's a question, we err on the side of worse news rather than better news, which is to say we don't want anyone to think that we're trying to not tell you something that might be going wrong. So we're going to err on the side of making it look bad so that we can explain what's going on as opposed to making it look good. Keep that in mind as you move forward. We've provided also just some quick definitions of the equity categories. When you see an acronym like MBE, you know that means minority-owned business enterprise. We just try to provide a little bit of additional information on these presentations because we do work with a lot of acronyms and sort of unique information. Our first presentation tonight is going to be Lincoln High School, and we have a couple of different slides on this one, and so we're going to start with this one here, but then there'll be some additional slides. You've seen those in your packets as well. And I am going to turn this over to Eric to lead us through. And Eric, please let me know when you want me to move to the next slide.
Thanks, Marina. Will do. Hi, everybody. My name is Eric Girding. I'm the Senior Project Manager for the Lincoln High School Replacement Project on the 2017 bond. I was also part of the 2012 bond effort in managing the Fabian School and Concordia University project. Really happy to be here tonight and give you an update on our project, and happy to share information with new members. So some of the slides you'll see is kind of some general information, so some folks might already know what I'm talking about, but just want to make sure everybody gets oriented onto this project. As Marina was talking about the status definitions, and erring on the side of it doesn't look as good as it, we hope, or we're trying to make it rosy. This is the first time we've had all green actually in the as planned category. Really excited about that because we have been, had that caution showing for budget at times, for equity at times, and I mean, we are in kind of the 6th year of a 7-year project, and I feel like we've really kind of things have gelled together, and also a lot of sort of our reporting has caught up as well, as Marina mentioned earlier, the timing of just getting some of our reporting. So that so our equity has really come up into the green which is great, but just, in general, with our overall project with $242 million budget, we are about 85% complete of construction. So we had our primary effort of phase one, which was rebuilding the school and opening up the school building. And then this year we're completing phase two on the building the track and field, which are remaining 15% that we're working on right now. And as mentioned earlier, we are projecting, forecasting around $8 million under budget at this point, which is great news, and excited about that, and happy to share more information about that if anyone has questions. And in general, we're doing really well with our contractor numbers as far as within with our equity and contracting. It's been a bit more of a challenge with our consultant team. We were able to get a portion of the work that we did in phase two with other consultants, where sort of as a project within the project, and we were able to really increase that participation in some phase two work, which is great. And as we go, that'll be reflected in these numbers and in future reports. As far as schedule, we're looking at our substantial completion, happening this summer on the track and field and grandstands and parking lot and so forth in mid-July. And then in early August, we will be substantially complete with a field service building and a teen parent center. That's also part of our site work. We can go to the next slide. Unless there are any questions. And also, I can't see if there are any raised hands, so please speak up if somebody has a question. So, as I mentioned, we're in kind of year 6 of a 7-year schedule. This just doesn't show that first year, which was the pre-bond planning that we did before the bond measure in 2017. So there was about a year's worth of work before that. So these are, long-term efforts with the larger modernization projects. And you can see there in the last 3 years, 3.5 years, we're in a construction phase. Our phase one was completed this last summer, and we're here now in our final stretch on phase two. So as I mentioned, those the substantial completion dates that we have, and then our facility turnover process with phase one is in process, and we're hoping to complete that at early this second quarter of this year. And that's just getting everything kind of wrapped up and handing over to our facilities and operations and management groups so they can run the facility, and we move on to do our other work. Next slide. Here's our site plan, and just really, basically showing you sort of our phase one area, which was the main building. Phase two is kind of the rest of the site work. The old Lincoln High School occupied the area of phase two. We built a new building on the football field, the old football field. So that was our site strategy in order to allow the students to continue to go to school at the old Lincoln while we built the new one. And then we moved them in for this last fall, and immediately, went to work on tearing down the old building and building the track and field. Next slide. Here's an aerial just right after we opened of our phase one. We have a 6-story portion of the building, which is along Southwest Salmon and 18th. It's primarily classrooms on those floors. And then we have kind of our large volume spaces in what we call as the podium, which is a 2-story portion of the building that moves to the south. And that includes our main theater complex, which is in the center. And then on the south end, that is our gymnasium structure. And more or less, we have kind of 3 building structures within one. The gymnasium structure is a CMU structure. The theater in between is a tilt-up concrete structure. Then, of course, we have our multi-story steel and concrete frame structure, kind of all tied together. Next slide. And then here's an aerial looking down at our site, and just recently where we are in progress with the track and field. We have what's left of Old Lincoln is piles of crushed rock that we've recycled out of concrete. But we've done our grading of the field, You can see that kind of a dark patch, that's our first paving of one area of the parking lot. Where the grandstand structure will be sitting on that, so we wanted to get that paved underneath before the grandstands come in. We were really lucky with a relatively dry fall and winter. This was one of our high-risk sort of periods during phase 2 was to get all this earthwork done, demolition, and we have a lot of soil treatment that we have to do for the track. Mainly due to a lot of undocumented soils we have underground. And so we're able to do that work and not have any weather delays in that process, which has been great. Next slide. Yeah, this is a view from the building looking over at what will become the track and field. You can see in the far corner there, our 2-story field service building, which will be athletic storage on the lower level, and the upper level is a batting barn for the softball and baseball programs. And then to the right of that, you see kind of wrapped in blue is a single-story structure, which is our Teen Parent Center over there nestled in the corner. Next slide. This is one of the things we're proud of. A lot of the things we do as far as sustainability, managing our waste stream, in our the demolition work, and not just the sustainability efforts that we put into our new structures, but here is just a a note of how much we've been able to recycle out of the old building. 15,000 yards of crushed rock. That's enough to cover 3 football fields 3 feet deep. We're using a lot of that rock on site, but we're also exporting that for other construction projects in the area that need this kind of material. Love that. The legend of Lincoln, old Lincoln, will live on. We're actually just decided this week to use some of this material in our shoring wall between us and KGW, which I'll mention in a second here. Next slide. This is a view inside of the Teen Parent Center, where we'll have early Head Start program for infants, toddlers, and crawlers. And we have a really wonderful timber structure in here, nice warm light, and with north light coming in, that's going to be all glass. And their play area is going to be on the outside of there. And then you can see just across there is our field service building. Next slide. And a close-up of the field service building. It's concrete on the ground level, steel framing up above, and big open space up above for the batting. And then that's going to be a sidewalk that goes up to 14th Avenue to make another connection to the street to our campus. Next slide. This is just a view back at the main building. They're in the process of paving that area I was mentioning from the aerial photograph. Kind of give an idea of sort of the level. The track and field is going to be kind of just above your head level of the first floor. So it's just a little bit elevated. So the upper levels of the building will be able to look out on the track and field. Next slide. Yeah, this is just kind of an interesting thing, just wanted to share. Yes, we can see our parking area, but see we've got a big pile of rock and then kind of a strange structure there between us and the neighboring property. That's the KGW TV building there. People aren't familiar with that. And old Lincoln was holding up part of that adjacent land, basically. And so we didn't quite understand the extent of the situation until we did our demolition, but we've been very careful about putting up temporary structures, and we actually built concrete buttresses to hold it up while we did our demolition after we were able to get in there. So we're just kind of resolving that condition right now, but this I'd say is probably was one of our kind of highest risk portions of work in our phase 2. And we're happy that we've resolved the engineering of that, and we're proceeding with a shoring wall and gotten that worked out. But that's where we're using a large quantity of that crushed rock that we would have had to import otherwise. Next slide. I think that was it. Yeah. So if there are any questions for Lincoln, happy to answer those before you move on.
Okay. I have one. So we're going to come in, looks like 8 million under budget. So Marina, were there things you value engineered out that you're going to add back in, or is that money going to go to something else?
That is a discussion that we are waiting to have until we are ready to identify what that final amount is. That number continues to change. We wanted to make sure that we were able to get through this phase 2 and not have any unexpected, surprises in the construction. But we certainly know that there are a lot of different interests in that money. And we do anticipate having a full discussion. We have several board members that would like to talk about those funds as well. Certainly, things that have been cut through value engineering are always a top priority. There are other things that could be associated with the project itself. There could be other things associated with the program as a whole. So other projects that might fit within the definitions of the 2017 bond measure. So given the amount of that funding, we do expect there to be more discussion about it, but we're not quite there yet.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on to Benson and MPG?
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Eric. All right, I am going to turn this over to Armand, and Armand, you and your team will let me know when I need to move to next slides.
Thank you very much, Marina. Hi, everybody. My name is Armand Milazzo, Senior Project Manager for the Benson High School and MPG project. Probably won't do as good a job as Eric here, but I'll do my best. So yeah, if you look at the red, green, and yellow, we're cautious on our budget. I do believe that MPG may have some concerns, but I think we will stick within our overall program budget and not ask for funds. I'm pretty confident of that. Our equity has been pretty good. Our schedule has been really good, which is amazing. Our contractor and our team on site has been doing a fabulous job. I don't know what else to say to that. Is there any questions here about costs? I know there was a cost question about the MPG being over budget and the steel. I think as many people alluded today, and those who are in the industry know, escalation and just market conditions have been pretty crazy over these past 3 years, more so than I've ever seen in my lifetime, my many years in this business. So it has been trying, but I will say that our team has been doing a really good job of forecasting to make sure that we are ahead of them. We're also doing a lot of early ordering on materials because long lead times are a problem. So we're identifying those early, and some of our items have over a 1 year lead time. So we did a really good job up front to identify what those were and made sure we had a schedule so that we could track our ordering accordingly. Any questions on this slide before we move on?
Yeah, this is Greg. So you said, well, we're going to do a good job, try to remain within our budget. So what are I assume all the contracts have been let for Benson and that it's underway. So we know that part. What are the risks then that to you outside of the contracts that have been let, the prices have been there? What are the risks that you may not make it?
The risks that we have at Benson have been far reduced because of an existing 100-year-old building. Those have been the main risks. And as I said, those are reduced. The risks at Benson are things like small coordination issues that may not have been completed on the drawings, or there's an interpretation of the drawings that we have to work through. We still have some existing conditions that we're working through right now. But again, that risk is far less today than it has been ever on the project. For MPG, we're just starting. We're very much in the early stage of things. We have laid out the underground parking deck floor slab. We have poured half of the first floor post tension slab, and we were scheduled to pour the other half this Saturday. But as you all know, it's snowing out, and we will miss our Saturday pour. So that does push us out quite a bit, and we're still trying to understand what that recovery plan is because we're so new to that. So I think that's probably more of the risk at MPG. And the things that got us into the budget are things like we found a bunch of extra dry wells that were undocumented, that were paved over many, many years ago. That caused us not only a delay, which cost money, but also we had to rectify that, go through DEQ, fill them and abandon them appropriately. But we don't have any existing conditions after that. There wasn't a building there, so we don't have that risk there at MPG. Does that help answer your question, Greg?
It does. Man, I can't see it on my screen, but it looks like the contingency remaining for Benson is down to, is it 3%?
It is, but remember 3% of 300 million is a big number. So, yeah, it looks like a small percentage, but as I said, I'm pretty darn confident that we're not going to have any need to come back and ask for more money.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, Greg. Anybody else have any questions? And if I'm looking off to the right, that's because I have you all on my big screen so I can see everything. So, all right, next slide, Marina. Thank you. So here's our construction schedule, our overall schedule for all of our individual projects. The two that are in process right now are the very top, Benson Poly, and then at the bottom, MPG. You can see that we are in full swing of construction for both projects. MPG's, again, just starting to come online. Benson, we are more than halfway through. Benson is very unique because we have so many buildings in different states. We have some buildings that have finished paint in many areas, and we have some buildings that only have a foundation and the structural steel hasn't even been brought in yet to go vertical. So you will see a very large gap between where we are in progress between the multiple buildings. That project is like having 10 different projects all in one. Any questions on schedule? No? Okay, Marina, next slide, please. Here's some great slides. So one of my favorite spaces is the top left. That is the existing auditorium that we are rehabilitating. You can see here that all of the demo has been complete. We're starting to do our build back. There's a lot of structural steel and concrete shear walls that are being put in place to make this building seismically upgraded to meet today's code. The lower picture on the lower left is the basement underneath A. For those of you who have been to Benson in the past, this is the cafeteria or the dungeon, as some people called it. This space will now actually house all of our mechanical equipment for this building and a few other areas of other buildings. It will also house a sort of black box space that will be underneath and accessible to the students and to some parents if they are inclined to invite them down there for performances. On the far right, you'll see that the brick cleaning and all of the cornice and corbel cleaning has been done. It is so magnificent to see what this has done. And right now, today, you can see in some other buildings the differences between the black and grimy old to what you're seeing here in this picture of new. Just looks incredible out there. Any questions on the auditorium? Okay, next slide, please. Oh, let's see. These are our gyms. So we have two gyms. We have the original 1920s gym, which you'll see on the bottom right. You see our running track. For those who have ran on that track, it will stay. although we are getting rid of the bank curves because that is historically accurate. You can see in the picture behind the running track in the bottom right, there are some gray steel beams running vertically along the brick facade. Those are part of the new structural steel support. Those go down through the basement below, down below that into large footings. We're also upgrading the roof structure as well. On the top right, you will see the 1960 gym. That is the exterior wall. That gym was comprised of multiple generations of buildings to house the four sides, if you would. And what we're doing here is we're creating a category 4 structural environment so that that structure is the sturdiest structure on campus. That's why you'll see all of these steel columns being anchored and welded into the walls. And what you see on the left-hand side is a vestibule. That vestibule is building E on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side is the original 1925 gym, and we are standing in that photograph inside the 1964 gym. That entire vestibule has been removed, and a new vestibule will be added as well. Any questions on the gyms? Okay, next slide, please. All right, there's a lot here. You can read up top the many different things that are here. I'm going to start in the lower left. The lower left is building H. If you were to look through that building, Buckman Field is on the other side. The blue tower crane that you see in the background is the MPG's tower crane. What you're seeing, where you see the large excavation pit there in the green board in the background, all of that will be a new building, building F, that will actually is yet to be built. These photos are a few weeks old, so that is all put back now. The foundation is in. If you look at the top left photograph, in the background on the right-hand side, you will see the existing building E, we call it the 1920 original building. And then in the left-hand side of that top left building, you will see the existing 1960s gym. You can see that the gray area is masonry and some tilt panel. And the area on the left, there's a different type of construction. So really interesting building, to say the least. On the right-hand side, we see building C. That picture, building C, is a mirror image of building H, which is on the lower left. You can see here at this, oh, I take it back, my bad. That is building B, that we see it on the right. That is a building that is infilled between building C and the existing building E and the auditorium. So you can see here we're installing metal decking. I believe as we stand today, that concrete slab has been poured. They are moving very fast out there, which is really great to see. Any questions here on this slide? No. Jen, I know I missed some stuff, so do you want to jump in at all? Let me know.
Sure, you're doing a great job, Armand.
All right, Jen. Jen Soma's been on this project much longer than me. Okay, next slide. Thanks, Marina. Okay, let's see. North Shop Wing and Building C. So you can see here on the bottom left, as I said, some of these buildings are already starting to get into finished stages. The walls that are on the blue, that look blue, those will have lockers. The top right, obviously some stairs going in. And on the bottom left, that is actually a science classroom that is under construction. Any questions here? Okay, next slide, please. Oh, one of my favorite parts of this job is our student engagement and getting new, young folks to get into our trades. Benson is such a unique experience to work there because all of the people that are on this project are really, really happy to be there because they're building for future generations of their own trades that are going to be brought up into the workforce. So everybody's really eager to help and teach and foster these students and answer questions. You can see here some of the different tours that we have. The bottom picture is our architect helping give tours about what's going on in the building. We've also had the students do a design competition to build a design on paper first, a mock-up, then they built it on a cardboard, and they all voted for which one would be built, and they physically built a full-size mock-up, call it like a tiny home, if you would. And then once they were done with that, we brought it over to our job site, and the contractor has then added some additional detailing to it, some metal panels. They'll finish out the inside, and we will then donate that to a nonprofit for somebody to use as a shelter. Any questions on student engagement? Okay, thank you. Next slide. Oh, there's the tiny home right there on the bottom right-hand side. So our students actually built the structure for that, and then the contractor put the skin over the top. And then the top left picture, that is actually standing inside the historic lobby. Those white steel structures will be the new security vestibule that will be housed inside the existing historic lobby. Next slide, please. All right, now any questions on Benson before we move on to MPG? No? All right. Okay, so this is multiple pathways to graduation. Bottom left picture is the entry ramp going into the underground parking garage. Top left picture, you can see our tower crane. And what you see here with black and red outline squares was actually the formwork that was being used to hold up the post-tension slab. Again, this picture is a couple of weeks old. Half of that slab is now already poured. Half of the slab took approximately 58 concrete trucks. Yes, 58 concrete trucks just for half of that slab, just to give you an idea of the scale of this particular building. Next slide. This is actually an older picture that shows the underground parking garage more exposed before they put up their formwork. It shows the columns being constructed, and it shows the concrete shear walls on the top right being fabricated. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it. All right. Any questions? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Armand.
Thank you all.
Jefferson Modernization is the next one, and we have multiple team members here. So I see Steve nodding. I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Steve, and I'll let you introduce folks and let me know when I need to move to next slides.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marina. Yes, hello. Welcome, everyone, especially new BAC members. My name is Steve Efros. I'm a project manager on the Jefferson Modernization Project. I previously worked on the Kellogg Middle School project, and I'm working with two other project managers, Yana Horn and Keisha Locklear, and they'll introduce themselves as they present their part of the project. But I'm going to start with this status report, and then we'll proceed into the project presentation. For background, since we presented last to the BAC in the fall, the Board of Education approved the comprehensive plan, and we've moved forward with the Bora Lever co-locate design and engagement team into schematic design. As part of that process, as you heard, based on the most recent cost estimates that included major cost impacts from increased escalation compared to what was estimated as part of the 2020 bond measure, an additional $55 million was added from program contingency to the project. So when you look at the status report, you can also see that there is currently 15% project contingency at the start of design. And with the revised budget and this contingency, the budget is currently as planned. But we're also continuing our focus on target value design. And that began during the planning phase, and we're continuing it into design, and that will also incorporate contractor input as they come on board. Regarding equity, with our consultant team currently on board, we are at about 8.5%. And this includes significant participation of smaller COVID certified sub-consultant firms throughout the design team. And we're really excited. Obviously, I think we can achieve even higher numbers on the consultant side, but I think we see a lot of opportunities for a whole host of smaller firms that are integrated into the design team, really kind of being involved on this larger project. We're also using equity as a major factor for other owner-directed services, whether through direct appointment for smaller scopes or through RFP criteria for larger scopes. And we've also been meeting with minority contractor organizations to learn from them about how to increase participation on the project. And of course, all of this feeds into the current CMGC RFP, which was really shaped by what we've learned from our partners and from past projects to increase minority contractor participation as much as possible. As you can imagine, this is always a priority, but it has become an even greater focus of our overall engagement effort with the Jefferson community. And then finally, regarding schedule, we'll be discussing the project schedule in more detail later in the presentation, but you can see this high-level schedule that we are at the start of the design phase, and we're on track for our phased project approach, which includes a phase 1 school opening in 2026 and a phase 2 project completion in 2028. So before we go on, I just want to see if there are any overall questions about this status report. Okay, hearing that, I will actually hand it off to Ayana to continue with the presentation. If you can move to the next slide, maybe. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ayana Horn. Can you, yeah, you should be able to hear me. I use she, her pronouns, and I have been at the district since 2014, previously working on the Fabian rebuild, as well as the McDaniel modernization project, and now I'm on Jefferson. I had a lot to say about this slide, but in summary, it feels like, Steve, you've already addressed most of the things that are on this slide. This is the overall schedule, but it also is still a high level, and there's a more detailed slide that goes into the schedule at the end of our slide deck. And so I think what I will do is move to the next slide, which is about community engagement. This slide is also a summary about what we've been hearing throughout the community engagement process. As Steve mentioned, we're working with Co-Locate, who is our community engagement partner through Bora on this project. And they are a design justice consultant, and they've been working with us since last summer. During that time, we began going into the feeder schools, as well as Jeff, to first engage with students, and then we have, as well as going to community events and the broader community at large. So to date, they have participated in over 700 stakeholder discussions and received over 900 comments, and that will continue to increase as we begin the design process in the new year. And this is in addition to the extensive internal stakeholder engagement that we do with district and school staff to assess their needs and aspirations for the project. From these conversations, the team then documents the words of students, alumni, family members, teachers, and staff, and feeder school families, all of which are transcribed and tagged based on narratives and themes that emerge over time. These narratives then are broken down into more specific sub-themes with implications for spatial design and programming and policies impacting people's experiences with Jeff and the systems that they rest within. The gathering then of this data and all of the community input collocate and more than synthesize this information into narratives centered around those most impacted by the project. And with considerations around experiences and spatial implications, as mentioned before. So as you can see on this slide, they're broken down into themes of trust, identity and culture and belonging, safety and security, resources and delight and embracing the outdoors. And this information can be found more in depth in a spatial in an implications report, which was presented to the board in December and is on our website. So I won't go into all of the sub-themes and all of the specific narratives because they are outlined in the report. But you can then start to see, as we go into this next phase of the project, we'll see how the words and themes and narratives translate into physical space and design of the building, and they'll start to shape the experiences that we're trying to create within the Jefferson Project. And then we don't have a slide that specifically talks to student engagement, but one of the exciting things that we're starting to do, or that we've begun to do this term, is co-locate is co-teaching 2 classes within Jefferson this term, a design foundations and an AP photography course. And the students have done a design audit of our existing plans, where in each of those periods, they've written all over the plans and talked about the experiences they anticipate to have within those spaces, how our design intent what kind of impact those they may have. So then we can really get to, are we creating the environment? Are we creating spaces that we anticipate versus what the students think that they might experience in those spaces? And then we take that information, we can take that information back and analyze it and then have it continue to impact the design. And then in the other class, in the photography class, the students were asked to walk through the school and take photos of things that bring them joy, as well as things that don't bring them joy. And true to form, some of the existing narratives that we're already seeing about access to natural light, or creating areas of respite where students can be themselves, where students can experience delight. We're hearing some of the same narratives about what they want to experience and feel within the school. I think additionally, so they will be teaching that course the entire term, and it's been really exciting to hear some of the things that are coming through, and then each of us will have an opportunity to sort of sit through some of those classes as well and see the students engaging directly on the project. And I think now I will pass it on to Keisha, who will talk through how some of these themes showed up in the comprehensive plan.
Next slide. Thank you. Hi, I'm Keisha Locklear. I'm also one of the project managers for the Jefferson modernization. I am relatively new to PPS, but I've only been working here about 1.5 years. But really blessed to be on the project. A little bit of my history is I'm a licensed architect from New York, and so also new to the city, and it's been a little bit of a culture shock, but very happy to be here. So as Ayana mentioned, this slide shows a version of our comprehensive plan, which was approved by the board in December. We are still in schematic design, so the plan is in flux. However, This list captures how the plan begins to consider some of the feedback received during community engagement. A couple of the key items of feedback that, a couple of the key feedback items greatly affect our design and phasing strategies. Some things like the decision to keep the existing track and field in its current place and minimize disruption during construction greatly impacts where and when new construction could happen. Of course, retaining the original 1909 building, which was also the overwhelming preference of the community. Also meant that our plans would have to consider how to phase that building's renovation in a way that minimizes disruption to the student and staff experience as well. So we've been asked to also provide a building that felt open to the community, which included requests like, state-of-the-art athletics facilities easily accessible by the community and a performance theater with like a street presence. And of course, also always parking. Parking is always a challenge, more parking. Next slide. So as I indicated, with that feedback received and the feedback that Ayana talks about, community input has been essential to this project. We've now begun engaging with our new design advisory group, or DAG for short. So the DAG is comprised of students, teachers, coaches, alumni, staff, and other Jefferson community members who are really invested in the project's success. We just had our first meeting, which served as a reintroduction of the project to the community and served as a forum to hear the new DAG members' goals in participating in the process. We will continue to meet with the DAG and other stakeholders and look forward to how their visions for the project and how their input and feedback reveals itself in the design over the coming months. With that, I will shift it back over to Steve to talk about the design and construction schedule.
Thank you, Keisha. Rita, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So you can see in really a lot more detail here the design and construction schedule. This really highlights the phased approach, which includes phase 1 design, permitting, and construction of the classroom building that Keisha described. That also includes the Performing Arts Center, and then that phase also incorporates renovation of the track and field that Keisha described as well. That was a priority. And that will allow students to move into it in 2026. And then the phase 2 package includes the renovation of the 1909 building, as well as the gym, commons, CTE, and sports fields. And that will complete in 2028. So the phased approach is really, is based on really that strong input from the community, from the school, to allow really everyone to stay on site during the project. You can also see below those kind of main bars that show those 2 packages, the approach to cost estimating that kind of aligns with certain milestones of both of those packages. And those will occur on a regular basis throughout the design phase. And then those also align with the CMGC coming on board, which you can see in the different kind of stars at the bottom. And it also allows for their pricing of those packages and then ultimately setting the GMP for the project. And then below at the very bottom is just kind of a summary kind of by package, so you can kind of see what percentages will occur for each of those packages as we kind of move through design. And I think that is the last slide. So I just wanted to leave some time for specific questions on this or just overall project questions.
Steve, I'm curious, I think Keisha mentioned that parking was the issue, and that's a land constrained site. And the city of Portland hasn't been exactly, they don't like to see a lot of parking. So how are you addressing that issue, or have you got there?
Yeah, it's an issue for the community, especially for events at Jefferson. So right now in the plan, we have it on the south lot. If you go back a couple slides, right now we're showing on that lot south of Alberta, proposing some extra parking over there adjacent to a field.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on Jefferson? Okay, we are completing in record time tonight. Happy that we might be able to let you out half an hour earlier than we thought. Our next meeting is going to be in person. We have not determined the exact location for that yet. However, my thought for our 2 in-person meetings this year would be that we do one at Cleveland and one at Ida B. Wells. Those are our 2 high schools that will be starting master planning this year. One of the things that we really love to do is we love to take you through the existing schools so that you can see why it is they really need to be modernized. It's a great opportunity to kind of see the before, and we always hope that we'll be able to show you an after, whether you're on the BAC or not. There's always an opportunity for the public to come when the after is completed as well, and you can see the difference between what we started with and what we've been with. So we will be looking at those locations. I have to do a little bit of work to reach out to administrators and kind of talk through the logistics. We'll get that information to you as soon as possible. Any final questions or thoughts before we adjourn for the night? Okay, thank you for sitting through our presentations tonight. We really appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night.